Hi there, and welcome to the Fellowship of the Ring Pull. I should have put the teeth in before starting this podcast. A weekly sojourn to come together and talk about matters music and tech and careers and stuff in general. We are, I believe, going to be joined by Andy Gray later this podcast. He's going to join us online. So if you have any questions for him, why don't you join us on the Google Meet, which is linked in the video description down below. It's been a fantastic week. We launched last week unofficially on this podcast, but officially on Tuesday we launched the rebranding exercise, or rather branding exercise, with the challenge of creating an audio logo, a mnemonic for this podcast, which we're going to put out on the streaming channels and the podcast channels in the forthcoming weeks. So if you're interested in taking part in that, please check out the not the last video, because that's about vaults, the one before that, the one that says mnemonic. All sorts of details there, and there's a link on every page on the Crowhill site. I think this is going to be the most fun challenge, because a lot of the challenges we do, we can hear that people who are really experienced tend to come to the fore because we're listening out for programming chops or hitting briefs or, writing to picture and that kind of stuff. And this one, I think, this is about an idea, basically coming up with something that represents the personality of this podcast, which is just a safe space for people to come, have a blether, and it's presented by yours truly, who's not very experienced at doing these kinds of things. So it's a bit haphazard, a little bit like my composing. So, do take part. I've received some entries, or we've received some entries already, which are just fantastic. There's one that's, I'm not sure if it's someone just leaning on their sample collection. If that's what it is, you've got a really nice sample collection. And there's some that are like really kind of proficiently done. But just to reiterate, not looking for massively impressive harmonic chops. Programming doesn't need to be big, doesn't need to feature samples. It's just something that's instantly identifiable, something that doesn't get on people's nerves, and something that is original because it's going to be listened to by musicians and music makers and A-listers all over the world. So the prize is going to be a £2,000, that's about 2,500 USD, commission. We've checked with people who do this kind of stuff, and they think for a podcast of this size, that's a fair commission. And I think that we'll probably make it a yearly thing. So we'll run your theme for a year, and you'll also get a year's supply of Crowhill goodies. And we have got some amazing things coming up. If you've got your diaries handy, tune in on Wednesday. We've got a premiere of something that it'll make sense when it hits. It's absolutely amazing, and I've designed the GUI on this one, and it has it's just a bit mental, so it's going to be a lot of fun. On a more serious note, again, if you've got your diaries ready, join us next week for this podcast, because I've got some quite somber news for you about Crowhill. It's nothing to worry about, but it's kind of quite a big deal. I'm both excited, nervous, worried. I can't share it with you yet, but that's going to happen on Thursday next week. Some news about Crowhill and maybe a little bit of a direction change, but it's all for the good. But tune in for that, and I'll try and answer some Q&As, and I think probably the following podcast we'll do a proper AMA session. So, Alan, did we have any questions left over from last week?
We did.
Yeah.
So it was, what is your go-to instrument when you're composing?
My go-to instrument? Well, I started playing the piano when I was 5. So the piano, whilst I'm not very good at it does feel like an extension of me. I've tried playing the guitar and stuff like that, and it's so utterly alien that I don't don't tend to persevere in the way that I should, and I learnt the recorder, and that's really it. I'm a frustrated drummer, and I can finger drum, so always reach for a keyboard. Something that I have begun doing is, it was when my kids were younger and I'd put them to bed, I would have a noodle. I've got a piano in the house. I would have a noodle on that and try and work from a very pure point of view, as in get a melody. If you can hum it, anything can play it. And I've got loads of piano doodles on my phone that I do in voice memos. So that's what I tend to do. I find that the spark of composition, whilst my productivity time tends to be early in the morning, the sparks tend to happen when I'm in the moment. And that tends to be in that pure form. And I think when you're on borrowed time, it's almost stolen, just grabbing a quick minute to do a noodle. What you tend to do is not overthink things. And those have been my most successful, director's gone, thumbs up to that. Other than that, I've got a beautiful Schimmel. I say beautiful, it just happens to be a lovely sounding entry-level Schimmel that I always like to play. But if I'm writing on my rig, I tend to use, used to be the chamber strings flautando from Spitfire. It's now the saltasto from our small string ensembles. It's beautifully imperfect. It kind of, if it works on that, it works on most things. I think it has a choral quality to it. But I'd love to hear when you join us on the Google Meet, or Alan and Simon are moderating and producing. If you've got any questions, or if you want to contribute to what is your go-to instrument, go-to patch, go-to sample. I know there's a wonderful composer called Ty Unwin, who I think it's a Kurzweil patch that he's transmuted to various different technologies that he still uses to this day. It's just something that he understands. Patrick Doyle, I think it's a D50, or is it a Korg patch that he writes on it? It has a choral quality to it, and it's just kind of neutral. And if it sounds good on that, it'll sound good on anything. So that's something I'd be really interested to hear about. What is your go-to sounds that you start writing with? I think that something that's really fun, though, and it's I think, to paraphrase John Lennon, if you're stuck for inspiration and pick up an instrument you can't play, I think that's always fun. But the other thing that I always do for inspiration is just, and also a way of, I guess, using procrastination time to my benefit, is I tend to sample something, just go into a studio, a musician or a new instrument, just something. And I don't know about you, but I tend to find, particularly with something that I'm confident no one else has, and it's the only way you can guarantee that is to make it yourself. It's the one way of guaranteeing that you get something that falls out of your fingers that's unusual. And I get a real high out of it. I've always said that sampling is a little bit like pottery. You don't quite know when you've glazed something how it's going to come out. It goes in looking red and it comes out looking blue. And yeah, they're always quite surprising. There is a guy called Cliff Martinez, who did that amazing score for Solaris as a science fiction movie. I know I've told this anecdote before. He was telling me about that, and he's got a rule that he buys loads of percussion instruments, and the only way he justifies that is by making sure that he uses them in the next score, whatever that score. He was in the Caribbean, he saw a steel band, he thought, I'm a drummer, I'm going to get some steel pans. Steven Soderbergh rings up, goes, we're doing a science fiction film. And to justify his rule, he said, well, I have to do a science fiction film using Caribbean steel pans. And as a consequence, I think one of the most amazingly original and engaging scores of the late 20th century well worth checking out if you haven't heard that. It's inspired so many scores since. But that's just it's a lovely, I think there's something to be said about restrictions and rules. And if you starve yourself of resources, I haven't said this on camera for a while, you become more resourceful. So do we have anyone waiting on said Google Meet, Alan, who can join us, or am I going to just natter on my own for a bit? Oh, there's lots of lovely people there. Andrea! How are you doing?
Hello!
It's been so long. How are you doing?
It's been so long. Every Thursday when I want to join in, something just pops in, and I'm like, oh, come on. I'm good. I'm a bit ill, and I wasn't sure should I join in today or not because it's a bit difficult to speak. My sinuses are completely clogged up. So, that time of the year. But hey.
Is it
How are you? How are things?
Yeah.
Sure should I join in today?
Things are really good. Could everyone make sure their microphones are switched off so they're not feeding back on us? There we go. Things are good, Andrea. Lots of exciting stuff coming up. There's some big news about Crow Hill. It's going to happen next Thursday. So if you...
I'll be there on Thursday, definitely.
Yeah, check it out. And also, we've got a library coming out on Wednesday that...
I'm waiting for that one as well.
It is just... It's so rude. We've had to come up with a different term. We're not talking about mangling sounds or morphing sounds.
Right.
We're using the term poisoning because it's as rude a sample library as I've ever heard, and I've had a lot of fun.
We like a bit of rudeness now and then.
Yeah, absolutely. A few of the team pointed out to me that the GUI I've designed, there's a bit that looks like a floppy willy. It's not the kind of rude I would have hoped for, but what do you expect out of me designing a GUI?
Well, it happens.
It happens by mistake, but there we go. Are you speaking from Malta?
Yes, I'm in Malta at the moment. I was in London last week for a few days. I think I picked this up there. And in Croatia last week, I was traveling a lot, lots going on, many projects. Arts Academy, Film Arts Academy opening here in Malta. So very busy with that. It's really some cool stuff.
I can't wait to hear. Well, hopefully you can come and visit us up here and visit the Playroom.
Yes, that is my plan. I hope maybe for the solstice I'll be there. As usual, so
the light is
soon, definitely. It's in the plans because I think we have something to talk about because this school is opening up, so maybe we can do some things together.
Absolutely. I'm really. It's lovely to see you, Andrea, and we'll definitely catch up in a sec. But I'm also delighted and honoured that we're joined by my old pal. Old as in we've been friends for a long time. He's not old. Andy Gray, who's wearing a highly appropriate T-shirt. How you doing, mate? You want to yeah. There you go. No.
That it?
There you go. That's it. How you doing, mate?
I wear this often, and I just thought it wouldn't be a bad idea with the latest release from your badass company. Only the bottom thing.
How's the studio going? Is it all right? Because last time there we spoke about fires and all of this. Are you nicely settled in now?
Yeah. It's honestly, I'm so settled in. It's like I can't remember. So this year is my 40th year in music. As earning a living, professional. I mean, I don't class myself as a professional, but I'm a professional, but the music thing, I don't know. Piss artist, but anyway, 40 years this year in music. So what's interesting is we did touch on a fire, which is, I don't know if that's three odd years ago, is that, since rebuilding it and everything's, I've still got vintage stuff, but it's new to me, vintage. I'm so passionate about sitting in the studio, which, if you went back 10 years, long before the fire, I sat in here because it's my day job. But and I love it. For everyone on YouTube watching it, I'm not being. It's just that you do it for a long time, and it isn't that you don't like music. It's that you've got to deal with. It's not if it's dance music or if it's rock music, pop music, it's our music. But if it's film music, TV music, which is the thing I love to do, it's not really our music. It's for the project or the film or the director. And sometimes it goes good, sometimes it goes bad. And after a long, long time of doing it, you just get to the point where you just think, oh my God. And then I had the fire and I got this new thing, new setup, and I'm like a kid again. And I can't believe it.
It's
really
great.
Can't believe it.
It goes in waves. I mean, I just around the time that I started this YouTube channel, I'd lost my mojo a bit.
That's what I mean. Well, that's an easier, quicker way to say it, to be honest.
and it came back to me, and when it did, it was just so. I just remembered why I did it in the first place, and that's
me too.
Because it goes for most of us, it goes back to our childhood, and it's lovely to feel that sense of being a kid again, really. You know, that excitement, that high when the hairs are going up and you're...
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I agree. Totally. And some of the exciting things was like, I mean, being a kid again, I remember like having a emulator to, just because it was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and we only hired it because we couldn't, I'd say me and my dad, he hired it for me, and I just had it in my bedroom copying the samples from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And you're a sampling company, and I've been sampling since I had a Boss pedal, and it's just, I've got it all back. I've definitely got it back. I sit here, even if I'm just mucking around now. I haven't mucked around in a studio for about 10 years, unless you're paying me. And I don't mean that in a bad way. What I mean is, it's not, it is my passion, but it's like you just think, oh, fuck's sake. But no, the studio is amazing, and man, I feel great now. I feel great.
Well, Andy, you don't need introduction, but you are not only a wonderful friend, but you're an absolute amazing trailblazer. And there's so much that you're responsible over the years that many people won't even realize and stuff. But you're an amazing technologist as well as a composer and stuff. And I wanted just to kind of dwell on a couple of things. Firstly, is this latest release, because I love the story about that bit of kit. And then maybe we can throw it open to questions about.
So let's just pause for a second, right? So we have a Moog modular.
I think you've got your noise cancelling on, but it sounds good.
It's homage to the 303.
Brilliant.
So it's an amazing bit of kit, man.
So I thought that we could talk about that for a bit and throw open for questions. And then I wanted to come back to you a little bit later and talk to you. Like, I've got this challenge of people branding this podcast, and something that I've always thought is one of the most amazing audio brands of the last couple of decades is your work on Big Brother, and you can hear literally less than a second of that and know what is. So I'd love to go into that a bit, but let's start with the 303, because the story behind it is so mad that basically this piece of shit that has shit filters that enable you to do stuff that usually sound painful on better filters.
Yes.
And the fact that it's impossible to use meant that some dudes basically fiddled with the knobs and invented an entire genre. I mean, I don't think the little ditty we did about it went far enough, because house music became dance music. I mean, I may be wrong here. You're much more of an aficionado.
Well, we went into this, not to interrupt, but we went into this on a discussion, didn't we, about Big Brother? And I won't ramble this time, but like, I only did Big Brother because I heard Detroit House. And I did mention it in one of these. Anyone watching on YouTube, want to go back, I won't go into detail, but how I come up with that idea, which I didn't rob it directly because it was 10 or 15 years later, but Detroit House, which was the guys who had no money in Detroit, which is my bag, the Detroit rather than the Chicago House, which is a little bit more, soul-y, jazzy. And the Detroit House was like this Joey Beltram and Josh Wink and all these guys, and it was absolutely insane. And they had a 909 at the top and a 303. The hip hop boys decided with the 808, right? And it's like, wow, basic music, but fuck, it sounded amazing.
So just for context, we did some wavetables and did an homage to the Roland TB303, which was designed as a replacement for electric bass guitarists.
That's right.
Failed miserably as that, and then it gave birth, because it was available for nothing in secondhand shops. It gave birth to the house scene with this, because it enabled. A combination of both cut-off and resonance enabled highly repetitive themes that were arpeggiated in. It's impossible to use arpeggiator, so no one bothered to work out how to sequence it. So you just have a bar of stuff going round and round.
That's right.
But because the filter's quite crap, you could just max it out without blowing people's ears out. And it gave birth to house. And dare I say it, and this word for it came like decades later, what we now know as EDM.
Absolutely. I mean, it wasn't EDM back then, that's for sure. There was genres, and it was like, it's almost like whether you like, I don't know, if you like punk, or if you like rock, or if you like whatever it is you like, pop. And, you know, if everyone was quite genreized back then, EDM, which is a great thing, is EDM has brought the new generation to electronic dance music, where they seem to like all of it, which is great, rather than hip hop or whatever, or house or techno. But back then it was very, very defined, and it was actually, you know what, I think I would say it's almost 99.9% of all of it is defined by Roland. And you know, the 808 was supposed to be a kick drum, but it does not sound like a kick drum. But my God, it is amazing. It's not a real kick drum. It doesn't sound like John Bonham, but you know, it's like an amazing thing. And the only thing they've ever made of those 3 or 4 things that are really a pain in the ass to program is the 303. The 909 and the 808s are easy. Why they made it? Maybe because bass players are awkward, so they made a bass synth that was awkward. But I don't know. But anyway, it did sound amazing, and it was the one that didn't catch on for a long time. The 909 was flying off the shelves, and the 808, and then they sort of all come in junk shops. But I remember as a kid, I was like, I don't know, 9 years old. It was 79, and you know, and there was a 303, and that's the bass accompaniment, and it was like, well, it doesn't sound like a bass. And then not very
bassy either.
No, it's no bottom end for a start. It's like, Jesus, you know what I mean? You get more bottom end of a DX7, and that's got no bottom end. So it's like, you know. So anyway, once these dance guys, as I say, Joey Beltram being one of the main, or Josh Wink obviously had that one, the real big one, but. Even Mantronics, he's got a track called Baseline, and the track called Baseline is a 303, and wicked stuff. So you hear it and you go, wow, what's that? They go, it's a 303. You go, but that's the 303 that cost 20 quid, and no one wanted, because it was, you know, it's mental. And it's what people do with this stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's interesting how something that is so insanely limiting.
Yep.
Gave birth, like, it's a lot of people. When I've been so fortunate to speak to so many trailblazers, and that, you know, when I was speaking to Martin Ware from Heaven 17 and Human League, you know, I said, like, how, like, from a steel town, Sheffield, how did that happen? What you did,
mental,
and it was basically, and he said, we were trying to sound like George Clinton, but we couldn't play anything, and we had this technology. And that's what we were aiming for, but we fell short of it. And the word that comes up all the time is tension. It's like something creative out of a tension, out of a limitation.
I think you're all of that. Definitely limitation. And I don't know, it's not always, well, you know, in the early days, it's limitation of your finances or your kit, but it's also, you know, it's a limitation of your, you know, your own abilities. And, you know, and the thing is, it's like, rather than striving to, you know, whatever it is your job is, but in the music thing, but you can strive to sound like someone, but maybe you can't play it as well, or you can try and program it, but it doesn't sound as good. And it's interesting. It's like it's always limitation. Either it's finances and kit, or your limited ability, and you do your best, and it's your best. Because the thing is, you listen to someone else like a cover. So I've never covered anyone else's music, and I can't really play particularly brilliantly on anything, so I can't really do covers, and I've never actually tried to do a cover. I didn't learn by learning other people's licks. I just learned by my own head. And I think that is a limitation. I have limitations. I hear some of these orchestral scores, these hybrids or whatever, and you think, wow, I wish I could do that. Or, you know, that is amazing. What's that chord? And you start trying to work out the chord, and you start thinking, well, what's the point? Because you've just heard that chord. So why am I trying to work out what it bloody is? I need to sit and fumble around and come up with a chord hopefully no one's heard, or with the with whatever, like, kind of, you know, off key. I love dissonance anyway, but you know, the right balance of dissonance, then people's going to go, what the fuck's that chord? But that chord is actually a very simple chord, but because it's rubbing or whatever. And I think limitation, whether it be your skill or your budget or your kit, you know, is always creative. And getting into a room or a situation where you flood yourself with equipment is lovely for the first 2 or 3 days, and then you think, Jesus, you know, you just can't focus. It's too much. It's always too much.
We've got some raised hands already, but I just wanted to you know, talking about the birth of a genre. You've had a long history of working with someone who is an absolute antecedent to the hip hop movement. Without this guy, you don't get African Bambata, someone who we don't like talking about now. Without African Bambata, you don't get electro, which feeds into the whole EDM thing, and that is Gary Newman. And I believe that he went into a studio to make a heavy rock album, didn't he?
And found... so I didn't know him right back then, and we're talking 79.
Of course.
The truth is, the only reason I do music is because of Our Friends Electric, which is that song. And I heard that on Top of the Pops, and it literally changed. It changed the way I sat and watched Top of the Pops since I was 6 or 5 or 6. Glam rock was my thing back then, and I heard Gary Newman. I thought, Jesus, what is this? And so the story is, and I've spoke to him many times over the last, you know, I don't know, 20 odd years since, and he just there was a mini Moog set up with a sound, and he just played this thing and then stuck it on the top of what they were doing. And that is, you know, that's what's brilliant about a mind like Gary Newman. So he doesn't need to, you know, research to the nth degree all this kit and be this, you know, god of everything. He just goes, that's good, plays a melody, and the good thing about him is he's got a fantastic ear. So simple, just, you know, fucking hell, man, legend. And it's like, wow, that's the synthesizer that's played on top of a baggy beat, which is one of my favorite things. You know, it's like, that's a live drummer, live bass, live everything. Some people, you were talking about Heaven 17 and Human League, and I did a lot with, not with Heaven 17, but a lot with Human League and Phil Oakey. And the thing is, people say to me, oh, yeah, Gary Newman's like electronic. But Gary Newman back then, there's no electronics. It's a live band and a bloody synth. It's not a drum machine. There's no drum machines. Early Gary Newman, you know, Down in the Park, that whole album, there's no drum machines at all. It's not like the Human League, and it's not like, Heaven 17 is a bit different. They're a bit more live as well. But it's not drum machine or sequencer led. It's a live band with like a token synth dropped on the top, and a game changer for all of us.
Dropped on top and turned up very loud. And I remember,
loud, yeah.
I remember that appearance on Top of the Pops. For those of us not from these shores, it was it was the music show, and it would make
Thursday night, right?
Thursday night.
We would have probably been. We're a similar age. We'd have been there. We'd have seen him out of the blue, and we'd have gone. Both you and I are very similar in taste and whatnot with sounds and that. We'd have been going, what is that?
I remember going to the
noise.
I remember going into the playground at my primary school the next day, and everyone talking about it. And it wasn't just the sound; it was the performance and the way he got them to light it, which was really different from Top of the Pops. But it's like you remember. It's one of those moments where you remember where you were, what you were doing, who you were with.
Well, I remember saying to my dad after that on the Thursday, I said, look, Dad, I can't remember what month that was, obviously, but one of my mates is a geek. He's going to text me in a minute, tell me exactly when it was. But Dad, can I have nothing? But I just want a synthesizer for Christmas, and that's the year I got my SH09.
Wow.
From the same shop where Paul Hardcastle used, because we lived in Leytonstone, me and Paul Hardcastle, Leytonstone, and Friedman's Music. I went for Christmas and I got a second-hand S8. Well, it's only a few weeks old. To me, new SH09, and it was like, wow, I have a thing that makes noises like Gary Newman. The only problem was I couldn't play it like Newman. But it went pew pew, and I was like, wow, that's cool.
So we've got some hands up. We've got I believe Mark put your hand up first, Mark Bellinger. How you doing, Mark?
Oh, there we go. Hello.
How you doing, Mark?
I'm in the sauna this week. So, listen, I've got a question. I've been noodling around this week, playing around with ideas for this audio branding, having a lot of fun. I decided to sort of just do stuff without any of my billions of sample libraries, but pick up my crappy guitars and banjo and try and make some noises and do some stuff. And it sort of leads on from what Andy was saying. And I guess the question is, whether for this particular project or any project, is how far do you go down a particular avenue before you go, that's fucking shit, try something else, or progress and keep going with it? Because I've got a couple of ideas, and then when I come back to them in the morning, I've gone, what were you thinking? That's just truly awful. And I'm thinking, if I keep going with those, will they become better, or is it better just to do 100 crap ideas until you get something that's clearly, obviously working?
Can I answer that, Christian, if you don't mind?
Andy, you take over, mate.
Okay, so let me tell you one thing, and this is the honest truth. The honest truth. So we touched on Big Brother, for instance. So I was approached to with a few other people to write that, to have a punt at this summery, crazy, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what, like a reality show. And then back then, no one had heard the word reality. And anyway, so I come up with that idea, and it's the first idea I come up with. And I sent it to my manager at the time, who was Oakenfold's manager as well. And Oakenfold never even heard it. So Oakenfold has nothing to do with Big Brother. I've said it a million times. There's nothing weird about that. That's that. So I sent it, and the manager said, well, we ain't sending this because it's no good. And I said, I think it is good, because there's no good or bad, by the way. We all know this. That's the next thing. We know this. But when you say that, your question is, how do I know if it's rubbish or what? So when you like it, then you need to go, well, I like this. And you don't listen to anyone else or what everything else is doing. You just go, I think this is quite quirky. Or because obviously what Christians for Crow Hill, this thing. I mean, I'm fancying making up a name and making something for it, and then they'll think it's insider dealing, and Christian won't give me it because I'll come up with a good idea, but not really. No. So the answer is, like with Big Brother, they said no, we ain't going to put this forward. I said I think you need to, because I think it's all right. And we got the pitch out of 360 people, and I didn't change it. It sounded completely different at the time. It was stuff that I was doing in the clubs, but no one had heard it certainly no one heard it on the telly, but I was DJing and playing that stuff live, and I just thought it was good. And I just thought, well, yeah, it's good. And I know it doesn't sound like anything on a telly, but I like it. And I think that's when you say, just submit that to Christian and Crow Hill, because you mustn't overthink it, because you can't write anything that you've heard before that's original. So it can't be done. So you're writing this thing, well, it don't quite sound like whatever. We're writing the music for James Bond. We don't quite sound like John Barry. But the thing is, we've heard John Barry, and for me, it's the best string arrangements on the planet. But why would I sit for hours trying to copy it if I got the gig to do James Bond? I would try and move it on. And that's the thing. It's just, when you're happy with it, send it and move on.
Yeah. I've got a little quick story. I split up with a writing partner, and he was a guitarist, and I'm a keyboard player. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, I've always just played the piano, keyboard. So guitars are really they're just odd for me. And the first pitch I got in since splitting up with this guy, and I was really had no confidence at all. they said, "Oh, we want an indie guitar track," and I was like, "For fuck's sake!" I don't play guitar. So again, talking about this like limitation and tension thing, I just plugged a guitar in and just strummed some chords, any chords, and they're all pretty shit. And then I just played them on a keyboard, and it just sounded completely different to me, completely new. But then I made the mistake of going and getting absolutely hammered, and I said, what this needs is someone singing on the top. So absolutely hammered, I sang it over the top, and then I sent it off. And I woke up on the sofa of the studio the following morning, and I went, I have an awful recollection of singing something last night. And I mean, you think I'm not a guitarist. I'm Jimi Hendrix compared to what I am as a singer. And I sent this off, and I rang up my agent, and I went, you haven't sent that, have you? And they went, oh, no, we kind of liked it. Who did you get in to sing? And I went, I think me, but I can't remember. Anyway, I got the gig. And if I'd been left up to my own devices, I would have recalled it. Got the gig. I got a proper singer in, and
they copied you.
No, they did it in a proper, because it was set in the north. So they did it in a proper northern accent. But it got commissioned for a second series, which I was really surprised about. And I just, ego, just wanted to check they were still using my theme. And the track came on, and it sounded a bit duller than I remembered. And then suddenly they'd mixed up the masters and they put my demo on. So in series 2, it's me absolutely hammered, singing mid-blackout. I wouldn't recommend getting pissed and working, and it's not a habit that I got into because it was a bit traumatizing. But that thing, for anyone outside the UK, you won't know it, but it became a thing called 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps, and it ran for about 180 episodes for about 15 years, and that was something that I would have recalled, and that really set me on my way, and gave me my confidence. So great advice there.
Yeah, definitely.
Andy. Definitely. Nicholas, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good, thank you. How are you guys? It's good to see everyone. It's nice coming on here and seeing everyone. My question actually kind of ties into this idea of having like unique sounds, and I'm just really super interested in these pieces of equipment like the 303 that were made for something that it sounds nothing like. Like the 303 was supposed to be a bass player, but it sounds nothing like it, and it's much cooler because it sounds nothing like it. Like there's a reason why on old synthesizers there are string patches. They're supposed to sound like strings, but they don't. They sound cooler. Like they sound like something completely different. And I'm just obsessed with finding this stuff. Like for instance, another example is like the DX7. The electric piano on a DX7 sounds nothing like a Fender Rhodes, a Renderphodes, but it like took off in the 90s, and it's kind of like the sound of my childhood now. And like I'm obsessed with like that DX7 electric piano sound because it was used in Disney films, but it sounds nothing like it. I have my current favorite is I found this Roland I'm
on the wrong thing. Is it my computer that's running this? Okay. Let's put that on our checklist, the Annex Wi-Fi. Sorry about this.
But it's like I don't like MIDI guitar players that are just playing piano samples or trumpet samples. I want it to sound different. So this VG8 has like all the articulation of a guitar, but it has synth patches or like synth brass patches, and it just sounds like nothing I've heard before. So all that to say is, what do you have any of these kind of gems of like really niche pieces of equipment or sound libraries or stuff that is supposed to sound like something, or the idea of it was something to, like maybe it's supposed to sound like a piano like the DX7, but that sounds nothing like it, and it's cooler for that fact. Have you got any of these kind of like pieces of gear or like ideas of how to kind of mangle sounds to make it work
is that
create something new?
Who's that?
Always to you, Andy. They're bored to the back teeth of me.
Yeah, definitely. I got So I just think Christian and I have spoken about this quite a lot. I am sound led. Full stop. Even with like, I don't know, the themes, Big Brother. or whatever, things like that. Even for a film, even work for hire for a film where there's a director, hopefully not shouting at me, but whatever it is that I've done, it's sound led. So, and I honestly do not care where the sound comes from, what it is. I just want it to sound really fucking cool. And that's it, right? So I just want it to sound really cool, even if it's quirky, whatever. So hybridizing, I mean, these days, I would say, like talking about the DX7 piano, so you obviously like that, right? So you can obviously quickly sample that in whatever you use for resampling, and then blend that with a real piano or a Crow Hill piano or whatever it is you're doing, right? And then so you've got two of those things. So there's a bit of DX in there, you've got a bit of Crow Hill in there, you've got a bit of something else in there, and then that resample that's the third thing. And then so now you've got something that's a complete hybrid, but no one else knows that part of that is this thing that started your idea, which sounds like a DX7, which doesn't sound like a piano. And so that's how I've always approached sound creation like that. And I think we're in a really good place now, all of us, whatever DAW we use or whatever sampler we use, we're in a great place where layering, hybridizing. So instead of just like that thing behind me, that Moog modular, whatever, or mini Moog, whatever it is you got, right? Instead of just going, analog oscillator, digital oscillator, FM oscillator, all this stuff, sampler. I mean, I think it's quite an old-fashioned way to look at it. I really do. So when you say, oh, it's a sampler, like the S1000, or my days it was a Fairlight, I think you need to, the word sampler, I mean, who uses that word anymore? I mean, it's like contact is contact, right? It's not really a sampler anymore. It's and it's a bitch to use, but it's a sample library player, right? So I would say, going back to finding those niche things, anything and Christian's done some amazing videos on this, is like tapping a wine glass or stroking it and then putting it in and pitching it in the SX, whatever. I would say any sound source that you're into that gives you like, makes you feel, shit, I can do something. And then you think, well, okay, but the DX7 piano #1, we've heard it before. And also you might sound a bit like Phil Collins, and personally, that back then it was cool, but I don't want to do that.
Was it?
Well, I don't know.
It's still cool. It's still cool.
I'm not gonna do that now, man. It's 2025, dude. So what you can do is you can take a DX7 piano, which, I love that, and then layer and mash and layer and mash and resample and layer and mash. And then you'll get to the point where this thing, whatever it is you've done, hopefully you've done it in round robins and blah, 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 is going to be yours, right? That's totally yours. And, I've said this, and another thing, just on that layer and mashing, is I love, and I have worked with him, but a long, long time ago, right at the beginning, Hans Zimmer and his stuff, which Christian has, he's teamed up with him lots of stuff, and back in the old, the Spitfire days and stuff. But what is interesting about what you hear about, and this is for everyone starting out, really, this is my opinion and whatever, but you can hire someone that can go and play a dulcimer in the Outer Hebrides and then whatever, but that's great if you've got the budget. But you can do that. Back to the DX7 comment or whatever it is, right? We can all do this on a small level, even resampling samples and resampling synthesizers. We don't need a team of samplers that are making thousands of sounds for the film like June, which is unbelievable. And obviously the resources are epic on an epic scale, but you can do that on your own scale by going, this, whatever it is, omnichord sounds great. And I'm going to mix the omnichord with the DX7, with the SH101 or the 303, and then mangle that through 4 plugins, resample that. And now you have that, and you've done it all with your own hands, right? That kind of full contact vibe. So I would say, for me, I'm so passionate. If you sat me in front of a piano, I do music in front of a piano, but it's not, it's like a piano. We've heard the piano, right? And you can be a great pianist, and that's fine. I'm not a great pianist, but it just make a sound, and and whatever that is, then mangle it, and then no one knows what it is, but you know what it is, or what started it. I know that's a long answer, but that's how I work. I'm mangling and this stuff behind me. I wouldn't dare use that on a film live, no chance. So this is the brief, or this is the project. I will spend ages, if I've got ages, sampling the shit out of it, round robbing it, sticking it all into, in my case now, Hallian, because I like it, and then using that, because someone says change it, and you look at that and you go, oh, well, I've taken pictures like we used to do on a Polaroid in the Human League days, but I can't really see where that lead goes, and it doesn't sound the same, and I've been here for 2 hours, and I got 2 hours. So I just think mangling, resampling, and your inspiration of finding something old, or even a sample of something old, that's what I would say.
That's a great insight, Andy, and I absolutely. I love that confidence of just no one else has got this sound. There's no way they've got this sound, and therefore it is inherently original. And
right.
and then you don't have to worry about the music. Then you can.
If it's a really good sound, you can just press D, and then you go
off you go.
Wow, that's like 15 minutes, and it's really cool.
But before we come to our next raised hand, you mentioned the word cool. How do you define that? Is it just a feeling in you?
Well, you know what? Some stuff sounds really. I spoke to Julia, my wife, so I wouldn't do too much swearing on this podcast because I know that's me, right? But if it sounds fucking cool. I mean, I'll tell you what. Let's use Hans Zimmer. Let's use Hans Zimmer as an example. Let's use Dunkirk. So probably one of the coolest fucking scores that exists. So we use that as a bar. If it can sound as cool as Dunkirk and be stuck to the picture, that it looks like it feels like it's a special effect. I don't think, and this is in my personal opinion, there's a piece of music that sticks to picture. And I'm not going down the John Williams and Star. Obviously, I love that. I was brought up on that Star Wars. But just cool is when you listen to something. I would say Dunkirk is probably the best piece of music, in my humble opinion, that's ever been written to picture. Not for thematics and not for the glamour, but just for wow, edge of the seat with no. And so that is fucking cool. And if you hear that, if you just listen to that, you go, wow, it just is. There's no melodies, but it never stands still. I've heard that he's using the what's the effect? I've forgotten what it's called, where it's ascending. Whenever there's like the barber pole, I've forgotten what it's called now. I do know what it's called. And he's using that effect, which apparently he struggled over, but I can't really hear that. But it's just super cool. And it's not in your face. Switching from Hans Zimmer, T-Rex. There's something about the stuff Mark Bolan did. It just is cool. And it just, so your question is, what do I define? It's very, very difficult. I think it needs to sound, for me, it needs to sound, not too defined. I don't want any, like, here comes a piano plinky plonky, or here comes a drummer. Just want it all to be this, like, gelled thing. And, and just a real sonic, and not a sonic mess, like it's tipped on the floor, but just so every single instrument is either EQ'd, but hopefully not EQ'd. You pick the right sound, and it just works. And like compression wise, it's just there. And the difference between, someone said to me the other day, actually, and this was the thing, actually, Christian, you said to me the other day, you said, with these big thematic string libraries, whatever, back in the past. And I said, and it's going to be a time where television is frowned upon for, it's like a small drama, and they've got a philharmonic, probably you're responsible for recording them. And I'm like, I get that. But if you take one of your string libraries, which are the best, right? Both companies, the best that you did. I get it. If you play a cheesy fucking line to a cop drama and just play it like a theatrical pianist, oh my God, I want to vomit, right? So that's not cool. And that isn't cool. So you know all the notes, you've got the best sample library, you play them boldly. The best thing to do is to bury them in and try and extract John Barry from this string arrangement, who was cool. John Barry's another example, super cool. You Only Live Twice. I mean, that string line is just like, wow. Mantovani, I know he's a bit uncool, but it fucking sounds cool. But you get plinky plonky people, and they're very good musicians. And I think the other thing is like, I know this is controversial, but I think if you're a fantastic musician, you tend to just think about the melodies and the notes. I'm not slagging off, because that's one of the other skills. But if you're not a fantastic musician, I think you tend to rely on to get emotion from not only the notes and the chords, but the sound, or how it makes people feel, and the mixture between all those little elements that comes over you like a wave, rather than trying to play a wave because you can't play the notes quick enough. That's how I deal with it. And I think, well, I could make you very, very sad, very, very scared. Maybe I'll struggle to make you happy because I don't really like happy music, but I can make you happy. And I do it through, some of it is notes, a lot of it is sound, mixing sound.
Yeah. Andy, what I take from your comment is not necessarily identifiable, but when something is unmistakable.
Yes.
And I think that for me, if you look at the people who I would judge as cool, it's, there's something, a lot of people say John Barry is not the greatest composer ever to have lived. I share your feelings towards him. I think he's amazing. What sets him aside from, I think, most other orchestral composers is you can tell it's him within a beat.
Great. Yeah, agree.
You can literally scan through a radio and you just go, John Barry. He's unmistakable. And I think that there is, it's unmistakability combined, I think, with courage.
Yeah. Okay. So that's an interesting. So courage. I think you're right. I just think that I never think I'm courageous in the studio. I think maybe I'm, I tell you what, it's like, I know John Barry had a fantastic string arranger as well. And, we actually went to Angel Studios, me and this great composer that I worked with, Phil Sawyer, back in the day when I was like an assistant. And we hired everyone that John Barry hired to try and do this thing. And it did not sound like John Barry, even with the orchestrator. And so there's obviously a magic that he's adding. But I just think that there's, I think that you start off with an idea, whether it is with a brief or whatever, and you go down that road, and if you just rely on, all you can do is what you can do. And if what you can do is be an extremely accomplished pianist that then switches to strings and orchestras and wind, and then gets a fantastic copyist in, I think that there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not saying that, but I think there's a point where you are handing the baton on and on and on and on and on. And unless you're going to be right there at the end, reining it back in, it is this organic thing, which obviously is a lot how it works because of the workloads and what the people are doing. There's nothing wrong with that, but you struggle. I do think you struggle unless you're a type like Hans Zimmer, who, as I understand it, with Alan Meissen and all the mix and that he's even in with the mix, just doing it. Where I think that at a smaller level, you can be cool if you've got an idea, and you now, using that John Barry analogy, you can now have a sound, and you can't help but keep doing that sound because you always start on D, unless it's whatever or wherever it is. And I think that that's the simplicity for me is also, simplicity is cool. And I accidentally said simplicity, but that's cool. Theatrical isn't cool, in my opinion. So, as much as I love, listen, Star Wars is wicked. It's not cool. It's not cool.
Yeah.
Although Luke's theme is cool when he goes in yeah, that one is cool.
Yeah,
The
and
theme tune
the
is
canteen,
great.
the canteen scene is cool because it's
Well, that
totally
is cool
it's
as
totally
well.
wrong. Ragtime, why?
Yeah, I know, but that is cool. But the big theatrical, I just think it's just cool is difficult.
Yeah, it is a difficult one. We've had a raised hand from a while from our friend in Guatemala. How are you doing, sir?
I got this is perfect timing. I got something in the mail today, and touching on courage. I feel like sometimes you also like have to just let things happen, and be okay with whatever the outcome is gonna be. Because I did that. I'm not trying to put myself in here, but I did that a while ago, and I got
Hey!
out of that. I just got them this morning. By the way, thank you guys. But another thing, talking about like sampling and stuff. I feel like sometimes you also like have to be open to whatever could happen. Because again, not trying to sound like I'm plugging myself, but the sampling instrument that I'm working on that I talked about last week, it really happened because I was trying to make a guitar instrument and it failed miserably.
Mm.
But in being open to like whatever was going on, I was just like starting to like mess around with it. It became something totally not what I was expecting, like not what I was planned. But being open to whatever could happen made it something very, very interesting that I promise I will share this week
Oh,
with you
can't
guys.
wait.
Because I've been forgetting about it. But it's really that, like I feel like part of it is trying to make it cool, but being open for it to be not what you wanted might bring something more out of it, something better out of it.
No, it's a brilliant comment. I'm going to cut you short because you're in that bloody cafe and the sound is awful. But
Christian, you've touched on this, haven't you? On one of your videos, you spoke about this. So I don't know if it was very recently. I remember you speaking about, I think maybe you said that you tried to either mimic or when you were learning chops or whatever you want to call it, right? And then you don't quite, you're trying to copy something, but that's the best you can do, and your copy doesn't sound like that because you can't achieve it, but it sounds like you, right? And that's an interesting thing. What you were saying then, and I think it's the same. So I mean, I speak for myself. I've got this idea in my head, and I stop myself from saying to like a director, it's going to be like this. I can't stop myself, but I try, and I sit in front of the keyboard and I think, fuck, I mean, I can't even do that, but what I want. But then you just push through, and then wow, that sounds good, and then you go down a path. If you just sat there going, it needs to be that, and you don't stop creating until you hit these potential goals in your head, it's never going to happen. I think you're striving for something or trying to base it on. If we all tried to copy Trent Reznor, we wouldn't sound like Trent Reznor, but hopefully we would get to a point where we can't get it right, but wow, this actually sounds really cool. And I wouldn't have done this music if I wasn't trying to copy that. Yeah. And I think then someone says to you on a project, that's the dream, is that they say that sounds really good. And when they do that, then you're off because you've tried to base it on an idea or vaguely on something. And then when someone says what you're doing is good, if you get that, then boom, this is the ground zero of all the creation for this project or for this album or whatever it is. And that is a great thing. And that's what happened at the early days of the Poerkenfold stuff. When I come on board, there was no writers, there was no one, as engineers, and Steve Osborne and that, all sort of engineers, and Oki's a DJ. And I come on board messing around with synths and drum machines and samples, and then it all suddenly exploded into this thing. But I didn't really know what I was doing, and I didn't stop to think, well, it doesn't sound like this or that, but everyone liked it, and it's the point where you stumble upon something and go, well, let's see where that takes us.
Yeah. I've got a nice story. And Moy, I will come back to you in a sec. I've got a kind of nice story really about that. My background is I started out writing music for porn films, and then, I was a bit involved in breakbeat and drum and bass and this kind of stuff. Always fancied myself as a record producer, and how I fell into media composition was by drum programming for composers. And I think one of my bigger breaks was a producer approached me because they were doing a series that was based on Jane Austen, but it was about a girl who goes back in time into Pride and Prejudice, and it was called Lost in Austen. And they were convinced that what they needed was not a media composer, wasn't a stringy clarinetty type score. They wanted it to really feel like a fish out of water. So they were absolutely certain from an artistic point of view that this character needed to have modern music represented. So it was going to be a modern score, like a kind of a teen movie score, over like a David Newman score, over Pride and Prejudice. I did one pass, and at the end, the producers just looked at each other and went, "No, Christian, we'll just go Georgian." And I remember going, "I can't fucking do Georgian. I'm a porn drum and bass guy. I can't do that." And I was just absolutely shitting it, because I think they just presumed I was, one of those jack of all trades, like a lot of media composers are. And so they went away, and I remember just being like, I procrastinate for about a week, because it's just like, I can't do this. So I thought I'd dig out some of the classic Pride and Prejudice scores. And I remember listening to one and going, neither did he. It was a he, the composer. Neither did he. This isn't fucking Georgian music. This is just some plinky plonk piano stuff, quite poppy, with some strings in the background. So I just piled in, and the producers, and this is no slant on them, just went, I love it. This Georgian vibe is brilliant. It's not Georgian at all. It's just plinky plonk pianos. And because of that, I got the Poirot franchise, which is
and one of my favourite things. My wife and I, this is nothing to do with me being mates with Christian. I've been a Poirot. I'm a Marple Poirot fan. My wife and I, we are massively. And you ended Poirot's life, and what a sad end, but what a great fucking load of music you did for that. I love that stuff. I love it.
That wouldn't have happened had I not pushed myself through this thing of, well, you need to find another composer, which is what I wanted to do. And, and Maggie, we had the same agent for a while. I remember Maggie saying, Christian, you can do it. Because she knew that those other guys were blagging it too. Yeah. And the thing is, the last thing you would want on that stuff was actual Georgian music, because it's shit. And I remember, I was doing something that was based in the Middle Ages called the Black Death, and the director went, I just want 100%, music from the Middle Ages. And I went, no, you don't want that, mate. Because it's shit. Because the only time they played music was when they were happy, and happy music's shit. We know that.
We know that.
It's not
make
played
it sad.
music. Yeah, exactly. You've got to make it sad if it's going to be scoring people dying of bubles. And that's the thing is, that what we forget is, particularly, I know I tend to focus in on media composition, but it's make believe. And what it is about expressing yourself. And I think that one of the real errors we make when asking ourselves if something is good or not, or is cool or not, is asking ourselves if other people will think it's cool or not, if other people will think if it's good or not. The fact of the matter is, there's only one guarantee that someone's going to like it if that person is you. Then at least one person likes it.
I agree.
So it's good if it's good for one person, the likelihood, we're not as unique as we think, the likelihood is it'll be good for some other people. And if it's not good for the person you're working for, wait till it is good for someone that you're working for.
That's right.
But and it was Dario Marianelli, so I'm name dropping like a bastard today, but it was Dario Marianelli who said to me, if you lose a connection to your music, this is the thing that he protects all the time when directors force him in a certain direction. If he loses a connection with it, if he stops liking with it, he cannot judge it, and that's when it becomes shit. And this is the stuff I find time and time again, and I remember, and I owe her an apology. I wrote a really rude email to a composer once because she sent me some stuff, and it started, and it was her, and it was really interesting, and it was cool because it was unmistakable, and it was like something I'd never heard. And then about 8 bars in, it just turned into second-rate Hans Zimmer, and I wrote this really angry email. It was like proper Simon Cowell style email, and I to this day I wake up in the middle of the night going, "Oh, that was a really rude email," but just going, "What the fuck are you doing?" Hans Zimmer doesn't even like doing copying himself, and it was Homo Schmitz. Ugh.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
she's gone on
if you
to
don't like it yourself, if you cannot, maybe it's music that you can nod to or not, but if you literally cannot be there playing it back on your own and guiltily going, "This sounds fucking good," if you can't do that, this is the way I work, then I can't do it.
Yeah,
I can't do it.
I love it. There's a clip online with Noel Gallagher going, I don't write stuff for my audience. They're all idiots. And then he pauses and goes, "No, except for my fans, because they're really cool." But
yeah, exactly.
Moy, you've been really patient with your hand. I do apologise. We've been nattering on. It's been a while since I caught up with Andy. Moy, how are you doing?
Hi, how's everybody doing? I can never
very
get
good, man.
Right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
We got you.
Yeah. I realized the first time that we went online, I had my really nice jacket, but I was wearing shorts. So hopefully you didn't see that. But anyways, all right. So I have a question.
I've only got Speedos on. Do you know what Speedos are?
Yeah.
Budgie smugglers.
And well, first question. I'm wondering if you're getting your 100,000 plaque from YouTube. That's the first question. Second question is if anybody can. Oh, you got it. Cool. Yeah. I see it. Yeah. Oh, I see it. So the second question is, I obviously started late in this game. I'm 48 now, and I see a lot of older guys already accomplished as film composers. And the younger guys, 21, 22, they sound amazing, like very good composers. And when I listen to that, I feel like hiding under my bed and waiting until the music stops so it can come out. Is there any advice how I can navigate through that? To just have a little bit of self-confidence and just keep moving forward in the world with such a great composers like you guys and other guys out there.
Andy, I'll let you answer. I'm loving this because I'll get Andy. I'll get Andy to answer it, and then I can think about my answer.
Forget the age. The good news is, well, it doesn't matter your age anyway. You can pick up a synth or a guitar and do a gig. But the good news is about film music. Unless someone Googles you, they don't know how old you are. So that's that. But I would say, you know what? There's a lot of amazing like sonic landscape, fucking nailed it. These younger people that have this endless amount of time fiddling with every single Ableton Live and all this stuff, and they just sound amazing and got all this stuff. But the thing is, no one really. That's not what everyone wants, right? So the thing is, what you got to do, and it ain't that easy, but you just got to do your thing. So listen to anyone that for instance, a good example, right? Not example, good advice, right? So if you found one of these young guys and you're thinking, Christ, he's really young and fucking sounds amazing. So just listen to what he's doing and think, okay, what do I like about that? What don't I like? And then take 3 or 4 of those and then come up with your own thing. Because the thing is, other than listening to composers talk on YouTube, since this new thing, we'll say new, I sound like a dinosaur, new, but like Composer Round Table, I only, it's not about what they're doing, and it doesn't matter how sonically good they sound. Man, there's loads of scores out there that are not sonically great, and there's loads of scores out that are so sonically great. Even I, as a sound designer type composer, go, wow, that is off the hook. But then it's buried by a dinosaur being crushed on the head by a Land Rover flying off of a cliff, or someone going, and they turn it down. So whatever you hear the soundtrack, man, it's not about that. It's about you. It's about you finding a director or an avenue, and they go, want to work with you, and it's about you being able to interact. They've got a problem on a cut, or they got we're talking about film, let's use film or TV. They got they're struggling, or lots of the times I've been hired I'm not proud to say I've been hired because someone's been fired, right? And I got no time but to work out what I want to do, and and that's not very relaxing. But once you start working with someone, you can talk to them and you can say, I'm going to play this, da da da. All of that, what you're listening to, will go out the window straight away. You won't listen to all these amazing young composers or old composers that are sonically perfect and have got $1 billion worth of sound, and it won't matter, because there's no one watching a film because the score is amazing. I mean, us lot are, because we're all on this chat and I'm listening to it going, fucking hell, that is only if I could get that. But no one's thinking that. So if you're creating music that is your own thing, I mean, a good example, really modern example, is I've got I'm dyslexic. I'm really, really bad with pronunciations. But I just saw who got the. This is embarrassing. I can't remember. But
the Brutalist.
No, not Brutalist. That's different because it's jazz. I do like that, but whatever. But
sorry.
But Conclave, that composer, who is awesome, who did All Quiet on the Western Front, right? The piano, just got a bad memory. The guy who manipulates piano, prepared piano. So he did All Quiet on the Western Front, he did Conclave. I can't, right, it's gone out of my head. So if you listen to Conclave, for instance, bloody hell, man, it's so clever. And what is going on is odd. And back, maybe they still call it this, but when I was starting out, it was like contrary to picture. So you see these, Vatican types doing something, a blip, 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 and you think, well, that's weird. And then All Quiet on the Western Front, where he got an Oscar, right? And you go, well, you got a war film, they're in the shit and the muck, and millions of people are dying, and this guy's gone on a synth and got an Oscar, right? So it's not about that. It's not about the kid, whether it's kids or not. I'm just saying you because you said that young people, but that they are some of the guy, the composers, music creators that work with, especially things like Ableton and all that. They are, wow, it's very, very impressive, and good luck to them because they're coming up and they've got the tools and they know how to use them. But it isn't. For individual people watching this, it isn't about that. That's not what it's about. It's not about every single note that you can play on every chord and every scale. It's about you working. If we're talking about music to picture, it's about you, sticking to that picture. Coming back to Dunkirk, which I used earlier, there ain't many notes in that, man. There is not many notes, and you can't hum it. But Jesus Christ, does that not even drive? Does it just support the picture perfectly? That's that.
I've got a couple of comments actually, Andy. You're not alone, and Moy, and you'll probably find that there are composers that John Williams envies. The grass is always greener. When I get really annoyed is when something is really simple, and I get I could have done that. It's like the Mark. It's like the Mark Rothko thing. So I think one of the greatest scores of the late 20th century is 21 Grams by Gustavo Santaolalla. It just doesn't get fucking simpler than that. It doesn't get simpler than American Beauty. And that's when I get frustrated, because it's so simple and it's so pure. You'd be fooled to copy it because it's unmistakable. Now, when something is really complex and beyond what I believe to be my own personal capabilities, what I tend to do is try and figure out what they've done. And it's a little bit like what we did with the blues in this country. We invented rock, which was a kind of a wrong version of the blues. And it's something that we do quite well in this country is take other people's music and do it badly, but in a way that it becomes its own thing. A little bit like Martin Ware with George Clinton. I think what tends to be quite fun about that is if you try and do what they did with your own limitations, it becomes something entirely different. And they often say that style is defined by your limitations. A little tip that I have is that if you're asked, I think something that's particularly difficult is when something's temped, and you go, this is really
a bloody nightmare.
This is really good, and I don't think I can better this. particularly if it's like musically really good, really well orchestrated. You don't have the budget, you don't have the time, this, that, and the other. I think the one piece of advice I would say is just listen to it once. Don't study it too hard. Just listen to it once. And then what will happen is you will create an approximation that will be based on your own limitations. And that, I think, will be inherently unique. But I think, Andy, I know it's easier said than done because it does take courage. But I think Andy's absolutely right. It's just about finding what is you. And that might be a weakness. You know, the talking about John Barry, something that singles him out is his melodies are monodies. They're never harmonized. Right. You know, they're always single lines. And you mentioned Monteverni. You know, it's these single lines. But it's something that defines him. And I think that if you were to meet Hans, he would be the first to admit that he's not particularly confident in his own abilities and stuff like that. But we've got Charles on the line, and the podcast wouldn't be the podcast without without Charles's chocolatey tones. So, Charles, it's lovely to see you.
Chocolatey.
Is this working?
Oh, microphone?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Daddy.
Yes. The whole time this whole thing has been going on, one thing has been going through my mind. And I credit you on the island for this, not you personally. It is an antecedent creative. Tennyson, Ulysses, the closing lines, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. I think that is the précis of the whole thing. Don't stop no matter what. Don't stop no matter what. I cannot, and now as I have openly admitted, I'm going to be 82 in April. I cannot tell you how many times in my life where I stopped. Not always to my regret, because there were certain ladies that I was glad I stopped. But at any rate, no offense, Mandy, I'm happily married. But in reality, the times I didn't stop, sometimes I just blundered into a success that I never anticipated.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of why I brought that up. That, as I said, the leitmotif in this whole conversation, not mine, my observation of Andy's comments and yours, Christian, and then particularly Moy's question, don't stop. If you are intimidated by somebody else, you're in competition with the wrong person, because the only person you're in competition with is yourself.
100%.
And that's it in a nutshell. And so, and if you feel like you get lost, one tool that I use, as a matter of fact, you may observe I have a piano here, which I just bought. I bought it because I thought, I think I want to do this like when I was a kid in high school playing football. If I ever lost my way, either the coach would do this with me as an individual, or if the team was on shaky grounds, this probably happens with soccer and any other sports thing, you just go back to fundamentals. You just go back to fundamentals, and you kind of reprogram yourself, and then you say, oh, I remember how to play the C scale or whatever it is. But for God's sakes, don't stop. So back to the précis, to strive, to seek, to find, but not to yield. And if you're not familiar with the poem, it's Ulysses by
Tennyson.
Sir Alfred Tennyson, or whatever. What they crown the guy or give him a ribbon or something? I don't know. Over here, they just call you Mr. or Doctor or something. Yeah. But anyway, so that's my commentary for the day.
Thank you, Charles.
I like it. Well done.
And Andy, right. I mean, a phenomenon I've felt, I've been in the industry now for 30 years. How many times have you thought you were about to have your big break and it wasn't? And how many times have you done something that has been a big break that had no promise at all?
I would, you know what? My honest answer, simple answer would say 50%.
Yeah.
That mean, honest to God, I've had opportunity, not opportunity. I've like finished projects with great opportunities, and for me, it even started with my first, before media. It started with Amoeba Assassin, which was my dance band, techno band, whatever. And I was doing. It's always a nightmare, and it's like, without going into the weeds of that conversation, maybe I'll do that at some point. But it's like, it's not down to you. It's not down to the music, right? So you do this piece of music for this. Well, I did it for a dance band back then, or for a film or TV, and it is just, and maybe the television show or the song, whatever it is amazing, and maybe it isn't. Maybe it isn't amazing and the public love it, and then it's a fucking huge success. Maybe it's amazing and the distribution's shit and it flops. And it isn't. It's difficult. And as much as hopefully I'm coming across optimistic, because I am a little bit optimistic person, but it's still hard, because you do something that's really, really good and it's your baby and you're so proud and it's all whatever it is, and then for whatever reason it tanks. That's hard. And if you do something, maybe not, you don't feel it's as good, and it goes through the roof, and then you obviously you're happy in the back end of that. But it's difficult when you do something that you really believe in and everyone around you believes in it, and you're all giving everything. And the reason it tanks, for want of a better word, isn't necessarily because of, it's different now with Netflix and that, but the reason it tanks is for distribution or whatever. And it's difficult. It's very, very difficult. But I would say it's 50, for me personally, it's 50-50. But not that I pick and choose my work, but I don't want to do cheesy things. And as I've got a bit older in my life, I do have an opportunity to pick and choose a little bit. But I just want to do things that are, I hate that word cool, but just, even if it's cheesy cool, I just don't want to, I don't want to get involved with the rat race of it all, really, if I'm honest. And but back then you're doing it, and there's loads of failures and there's loads of successes, and why was Big Brother so successful? Everybody hated it, management, everyone. The television program was going to flop. It went through the roof, and but no one could predict that. And it weren't because I wrote the music, that's for definite. It was nothing to do with my music, but my music's on it, and that's that. But I think 50-50. In my career, it's 50-50.
Yeah, I think everything.
But if you play back music, this is the other thing, right? So go back to Corpse. If you play back the music, and you've pitched for loads of shit jobs with loads of shit briefs, then I would die drinking whiskey listening to my music, my own music. But I can listen to some of my music pissed up with my mates and go, fucking hell, man, I did that 28 years ago. Fuck, it sounds really cool. I just can,
Yeah.
I don't mean that in a big head. I don't mean it's it's not a hit. It's nothing. You might never even heard it. It might be on an obscure TV show or trailer or whatever. But we did the trailer years ago, me and my band Fatal, to a remake of a horror called Let Me In, which you might know the original, whatever. Fucking hell, man. That's cool. It sounds fucking cool. The remake was average, and me and Noki did the remake of Get Carter. The film is particularly not good compared to the original, but the piece of music that I wrote called Descent, I still get emails today, because it's never available on CD or digital. It was only available on the film. Amoeba Assassin has never been released digitally, my band that started all this Big Brother movement, and it's not available digital. And it just is, we weren't listening to anyone. It was a punk thing, where it wasn't punk music but punk dance music. And it's the same as some of the film composers. Punk meaning you're doing your own thing. I'm not looking out, I'm looking in, and I like it. That's that.
And I can tell you from experience that be careful of what you do, because it may haunt you in ways
forever.
Yeah. So if you do something that's really shit or copied, it can really haunt you. And which is what I have with the Top Gear theme.
But it sounds cool. Actually, the Top Gear is cool.
Hate
because it's
it.
so fucking like.
Yeah, but it's just BT's beats and a sequel, you know. And it was
But BT couldn't put those beats together like you did. And he's my mate, you know. I produced his first album. He's my mate. But you put them together like mash up, and I like that.
Egan, you've had your hand up for a bit, and then we'll take a couple more questions, and then we'll probably run over a little bit. But Andy, you've been like amazing. Thanks for sticking around. But
no,
Egan,
man, I love you. I love you, and I love all your whole thing you're doing is wicked.
Oh, thanks, mate. So Egan, you've got a question.
Hi, can you hear me? Is this my?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Let me see if my camera works as well. Oh,
there you are.
Hello.
Hi, mate.
So I think actually now that I think a lot of it's been answered already with what my question was, but it's sort of along similar lines, which is that now as a young composer, as someone who's sort of just starting out, I think there's quite a lot of pressure on this need to find your own sound and to kind of stick out from the crowd. But I've found recently that I've taken a break from trying to look for work to try and find that sound. And I'm actually having more fun.
Jesus Christ, that for sure. That's definite.
I feel like I'm coming up with things that I never thought I would come up with.
Yeah,
but there is always the stress that I'm somehow kind of falling behind other young people my age.
No,
it's not a race. It's not a race. It's the best thing that anyone has ever said to me. Harry Gregson Williams said this to me. I am name dropping bastard today. It's not a race. It's not a race. And the people who you think suddenly just popped up out of nowhere and nicked your gig, you'll go and meet them, and they would have been doing it since they were 14 years old, Daniel Pemberton.
Yeah. That's right. Exactly.
But honestly, it's not a race. Don't judge your career, your work on other people. Honestly, if you're having fun, man, jeepers, that's. You know, and I think that, you know, something that I'm in a position where I can pick and choose what I do. I just try not to do stuff that I've done before. There's nothing worse. That temp is bad, but when it's been temped with your own stuff, it's a fucking nightmare. It's because it means it's like brothers and sisters shagging. It's bad for the musical gene pool. But honestly, it's not a race. It'll come in good time. And there's never been a time when having your own voice hasn't been the best way forward. What tends to happen, what I've observed, and it's not just with like media music, is what happens is you get a trend, it homogenizes, everyone sounds the same, and then there's a reaction against it. So whether that be grunge reaction...
Johan Johansson. He's a reaction against it all.
Yeah.
Fucking changed my life when I heard Prisoners.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this forever.
But, you know, if you look at the grunge being a reaction against soft metal, there's going to be a reaction against these massive MIDI orchestral scores.
There is.
And so... But there has never been a time in my career, Egan, that I haven't been asked to totally reinvent the wheel and come up with something totally unique. And it's just carry on doing that. Honestly, it's the right thing to do. And you know, be aware that producers and directors, they don't have the trained ears. They don't have the sense of nuance and what you're bringing in that's new. When they say different, they really mean different. Because if they're listening to 15 CDs and it's all orchestral stuff and it's all kind of, I don't know, something of my creation, Albion or whatever, it just will all sound the same to them. All sound identical. They will not be able to discern. You know, if you listen to the composer I spoke of earlier, Cliff Martinez, Steven Soderbergh, it's like one of those really rare long-term relationships between directors and composers. Steven Soderbergh heard a joke cassette that was doing the rounds that Cliff Martinez had made of when he sampled his dog. It just, you know, it's just, and my mum was a very successful actress, and basically she used to be in a chorus line a line of dancers, and she wasn't the best dancer. She wasn't the best looking. She wasn't the tallest. She wasn't the most statuesque. But what she used to do is she'd put her shoes on, but she wouldn't tie one of the shoelaces. And what she would do is, in the chorus line, is she would on purpose kick one of her shoes off into the audience. And that's what got her noticed by Cliff Richard. And it is about being noticed. And if you are chasing other people and you're trying to copy other people, I often say, everything. The other thing is, life is linear, and every single thing that you have done and everything that you have listened to will get you to that point of success. So, for me, I don't think that my personal musical heritage has particularly benefited from doing the Top Gear theme. But I can tell you what, a documentary series I did when someone asked me to write ska music with a brass band, that definitely advanced me. So you're just doing the right thing. I'm just going to end up with one last question because you've had your hand raised for a long time. BC, where are you? There you are, mate. Sorry.
All right. Am I coming through?
Yeah.
Okay. All the questions have basically been answered. I just kind of had a comment on that. We're all our own worst critics as artists. And sometimes we just need to get out of our own way and let the music flow through us and let other people decide. If, as you said, if you're happy with it, put it out there. This striving for perfection will have you chasing your tail in circles.
But definitely.
And, just sometimes if it's raw, it's better. And,
the Stooges.
As you said, it depends on the talking about scoring. I'm scoring my first feature-length film right now, so it's a bit, but if it fits the picture, if it supports the story and the mood and the vibe, go with it and let other people judge. That's my comment.
Absolutely, and ignore the critics.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna bring things to a close here. I've got a rant. I just want to put this out into the internet. But there's a new thing that's happening with sound on TV shows, and it's fucking doing my head in. A lot of you may or may not realize that ringtones have copyright attached to them. A lot of the Apple ringtones are actually written by Thomas Newman. So basically, you have to get permission to use them and often have to pay for clearance, which is why a lot of Apple TV stuff has Apple ringtones, which I'm fine with. It makes me jump when it's my ringtone. But there's a new thing. Instead of using ringtones, they're just using the sound of phones buzzing. It does my fucking head in. I don't know if you guys have experienced this yet, but basically when your phone is buzzing, you get so on edge. And this is a new trend. And I've had enough of this madness.
Is that because buzzing. Apple don't pay copyright or royalties on a buzz?
Yeah, it's all haptic as well, so it's like got a rhythm. I don't know about you guys, but I'm an insomniac, so I fall asleep with stuff playing, and you can't fall asleep if there's phones buzzing. It's okay if there's phones ringing, but if they're buzzing, it's like, gotta wake the kids up. Anyway, that's my gripe for today. Andy, can you stick around just to have a quick hello once everyone has gone? Listen, I'm just doing a quick sign off. Thanks so much for everyone who's joined today. I hope you agree that it's been absolutely brilliant. I think I speak for all of us to thank Andy for his time and his candid answers to these questions. It's been absolutely brilliant. As I said before, if you're interested in helping us brand this podcast and getting that kind of exposure, then check out the video description down below. I'll ask Alan to put a link in there. And indeed, I'm talking about the challenge that we've put out there in a video named Mnemonic. It's ironic that a word about remembering things is unmemorable to pronounce. There's a big announcement about Crow Hill coming up on the next podcast, which is the same time next week, 1900 hours, 7 o'clock UK time. So join me for that. It's going to be an interesting one. And also we'll be premiering something on Wednesday, a new collaboration, which I'm very excited about. And Andy, it's okay to kind of leak that we are going to be doing something eventually, aren't we?
We're going to do shit with simps no one's ever done.
That's it. And on that note, I'll say goodbye to everyone. Thanks ever so much. See you next week.